Zora and Me, Chapter 13. The first time I saw gold, I realized there's no such thing as good-looking people or bad-looking people. There's just people you see and people you don't. Folks couldn't help but see gold. They couldn't take their eyes off her. She was the sun. Mrs. Jefferson and us were saying our goodbyes in front of the linen store when Gold appeared arm in arm with her man. She wore a beautiful flower print dress, fancier than Sunday clothes but worn with an easy grace that said she didn't think the dress was special. She held a matching parasol and walked with the light music in her step. She might have been a spirit. She seemed more beautiful than any living person I had ever seen. Mrs. Hurston and Mrs. Jefferson stopped dead in their tracks, but they didn't eye Gold nearly as carefully as they did the man she was with. I don't know why. Next to her, he wasn't much to look at. The man was tall as Joe Clark and walked with his chest poked out. He was sweaty. Stain darkened both sides of his white morning coat from the armpits almost to his waist. I wasn't surprised either. It could have been the flame in Gold's shining brown eyes that got him running water so. I had never seen anything like Gold. Her face was round and soft. Her hair was blonde and fell around her face in loose waves and midway down her back. Her lips held the shape of a smile. Ease was just her natural expression, and under the entire surface of her peach fuzz skin there was a glow of candlelight. Gazing at her, drinking her in, I imagined that if a disagreeable moment had tapped her on the shoulder, Gold wouldn't have recognized it. I couldn't picture a world where her kind of person knew trouble. A window full of horseshoes got the man's attention, and he wandered off for a closer look. Gold continued walking straight ahead on her own, and now Mrs. Jefferson and Mrs. Hurston were trying to ignore her. They couldn't. Not only was Gold walking in our direction, she was walking straight toward us. To be exact, I think she was drawn straight to Zora. She must have recognized the familiar light beaming from inside my friend. "Good afternoon, ladies," she said. Mrs. Jefferson got full of huffs and puffs, and Mrs. Hurston stood up straighter. Gold spoke respectfully, but she wasn't looking at the older women. Zora and I were her intended audience. The beautiful lady was talking directly to us. Whatever it was that made her so beautiful must have been inside of us, too. We were pleased as punch, and nervous. Neither Mrs. Jefferson nor Mrs. Hurston said a word. Their shared expression said it all. They flashed her the fake smiles of caution, of good sense. "Afternoon. My name is Zora." Zora's words were bouncier than a ball. "What's yours?" "Not polite to ask strangers questions, Zora," Mrs. Hurston interrupted. "It's quite all right," the woman said. "Hello, Zora. My name is Gold." Then she looked at me. "And what's your name?" "Carrie, ma'am." I felt the urge to curtsy or bow, but I didn't know how to do either one, so I just bowed my head a second. "Well, it's a pleasure to meet both of you," Gold said, and a beat later the man came up from behind and grabbed her hand. I didn't know if he was done looking at the horseshoes or not, but he had certainly been in a rush to get to Gold. In only a few feet, he had nearly gotten clear out of breath. "Why are you talking to these people?" His voice was loud with a nervous, strained authority. Then his eyes shifted, checking to see if anyone was watching us. Once he established that no one was, too many people streamed past all around us. He tugged firmly at Gold's wrist. She didn't budge. She stood her ground. Sort of. She placed her hand on top of his, as if she took his gesture for affection. "Just a moment, William dear. I'm saying good-bye to my friends Zora and Carrie." She spoke in the same sugary, calm tone, without looking at him. Then she said, "Bye-bye, ladies," like she had been chatting with old friends and the conversation had come to a natural end. "It was lovely to chat with you. You take care now." Zora waved to her, and I did the same. As the couple walked away, we could hear the man asking Gold in a fevered whisper, "Who are those people? How do you know them?" She kept her hand on his and turned her smile to the opposite side of the street. I don't know if she answered him. "Can you believe the nerve of that woman?" Mrs. Jefferson practically hissed. "I surely cannot," Mrs. Hurston shot back. "And that man doesn't want to let her out of his sight. She best be careful." "About what?" Zora chimed. Mrs. Hurston met Zora's eyes. She best be careful about being too friendly with people she gave up her place with. I was puzzled. "Who's that? Who are Gold's people?" Mrs. Hurston only answered, "Some folks are too dangerous to have people." Mrs. Jefferson sucked her teeth in agreement, then left us without a word, strolling in what just happened to be the same direction as Gold and her William. Mrs. Hurston shook her head. "I suppose Mrs. Jefferson wants to find out if that ain't the best part." With the little parcel of towels under her arm, she took her hands again and resumed our journey, which I suspected was more about seeing than buying in the first place. Not much could have had the power to pull Zora's attention away from what we had just seen, but amazingly, moments later we stumbled onto something that did. Of all the shops at Matland Avenue, Lake Matland's main street, it was always the bookseller that drew Zora in like a fish hooked on a line. I wasn't half the reader she was, but today something in the plate glass window made us both stop. Propped up center stage was a thick green book, its linen cover greener for the black inked words pressed into its surface, the myth and lore of Gator Country. We couldn't believe our eyes. A whole book, a majestic book, consecrated to the monster at the heart of our mystery. Was it a dusty, dry encyclopedia of facts? Or was it the answer to our prayers, a book of revelation, a key to secrets? The cover drawing, etched in black, told us everything. A gator emerging from a curtain of swamp grass was headed right at us, turning its head just a little so we could see its vicious grin. We pressed our hands and noses against the glass. You could hear us breathe. Mrs. Hurston had been watching us. I knew it pleased her that her daughter was moved by books and words, that Zora had eyes to see the world and the wits to express what she saw. So when Zora turned to her mother, Mrs. Hurston already recognized the pleading in her eyes. Honey, you know we're blessed in a lot of ways, but we only have just so much money, and that book, she stared at the paper tag on a string that trailed from the spine, that book costs more than these towels. I'm sorry. I know, Mama, Zora answered, looking down to hide the disappointment in her eyes. I understand. Mrs. Hurston tenderly smoothed her daughter's hair and shook hold of both our hands for the walk home. When we got back to the Hurstons' yard, we climbed the chinaberry tree and just sat up there a while thinking about the book. After that, we climbed down and chased each other around the tree until we got dizzy. I plopped down on the ground. Zora plopped down beside me. A monarch butterfly fluttered in our wake, the black outlines on its white and bright orange wings like shards of stained glass. "You think that butterfly could be a fairy?" Zora asked. "I don't know. I want to follow it." "You do?" "Yeah, I do. Come on, Carrie. You got legs to run on, don't you?"